I'm Andy Gruswitz. Had the opportunity this summer to help out at Redeemer here in the communications and social media coordinating. And so we're just trying to strategize a plan for growing this ministry. And I think one of the most important aspects of it is to get into ultimately getting into how we can train ourselves how to do it, because I think there is a knowledge gap in a lot of aspects here. But those are obstacles I don't think are difficult to conquer and to take care of. So, all right. So I'd like to open up with God's Word in Matthew 5. I'm going to read just verses 14 to 16. And here it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your lights shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." So I share this passage because I long to see the church more faithfully live out this call. One of the main reasons why I'm entering the seminary is because in ministry I would hope to be involved mainly in evangelism and outreach, and in focusing on digital outreach, I see there as being a huge opportunity here, specifically as to how we can do this outreach. But I also think that in the church, in the Reformed Church, as at least I can speak to, we can stand to shed a little false modesty when it comes to sharing the way the Lord is working in exactly this way, and help others be blessed by testifying to the way that the Lord actually is using you to be able to live this out. That said, though, there are a lot of obstacles in our society today. I think of the cultural shift that we have in our society right now, and I'm not even necessarily talking about in the past 60 years of moving towards a post-Christian society. I would even go way back to the Industrial Revolution and the invention of cars as something that has moved our sense of what a city is, what a town is. So that now we have people who drive 40, 50 minutes to get to church. They drive out of their car, out of their garage to go to work throughout the week, and then they drive back home and they don't park in the driveway where they might run into their neighbor. They just go right into their garage again. And the town center used to be not just a place for tourists or people would go for leisure. It would be where all of commerce happened, and everybody run into each other there. And that's more like the biblical picture. But even here in America, there was a day like that.
Yeah.
And so, what it means to be a light is a little more complicated in some ways. And the town center, I would argue, has become the internet. I mean, we do our commerce there. We do our social lives, and for better or worse, there. And so, if that's where everybody goes, that's where we ought to be. That was a little image there of the old way it might used to be. And also, the church was right there in the center of town too, right? So people would go and meet in the street. They'd go to church in the center of town. Now we'll place our church whatever is kind of central to all the people that are driving from every which way. So I want to bring home 2 points tonight. One is that we at Redeemer OPC are well positioned to use and expand our gifts to maximize our visibility in this most popular gathering space. And the other is that leveraging the internet for gospel outreach is exponentially more impactful than any other previous invention. Now, I want to bring also into play some of the methods that Paul used in sharing the gospel and show how it actually applies well in digital outreach. So we look at his methodologies. He would follow the Spirit's leading in his missionary journeys. He would plan wisely according to circumstances. And he focused on major cities Now, he doesn't go explaining specifically why he did that, but why might we guess as to why he would do that?
More people.
Yeah.
More impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's also so that's I would think the main thing, right? But when we see that he finished, I mean, he would use such like very direct language to say he's done in that city, when he'd really just been in that one city, and he planted a church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for him to call his work done, and especially if you look at the history of the early church, I think it's reasonable to assume the reason why he could think that is because he'd planted a church that was vibrant enough to know that now they're carrying on the job. And so the local church then it's growing, in concentric circles, right, out from there, and now Paul can move on. And we don't have that many examples in the book of Acts of people doing that work, but we have examples in the Gospels that give us kind of a picture of what it might look like. So Philip, after he encountered Jesus, goes, and first thing he wants to do is go to his friend and say, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph, come and see." And of course the woman at the well, wanting first thing to go to her whole community and tell them, "Come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" Hang on a sec. So in digital outreach, we ought to learn from Paul to go where the people are, let the local church members handle the growth in that area, and inhabit the town square with the message of the gospel. And like I said, for better or worse, that place is the internet. There's other areas of outreach that we can focus on, but I think there's a very good case to be made for why this probably ought to be the very first step the churches put their energy. And there's many technologies that have been leveraged for the sharing of the gospel. We have papyrus and parchment, the Roman road system, maritime trade routes, electricity, radio, chariots, cars, trains, boats, and planes. Or just think about all the technology we use in one church service here, right? And I skipped what's probably one of the most significant ones, right?
Printing.
The printing press.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a church at the dawn of the printing press, I want you to think about, would you be the person to jump in on it and leverage that to the sharing of the gospel? Or I'm sure there were some at that time who might instead say, why would we do it any different than the way we've been doing it all these years? This is probably going to come and go, right? And so, that said, a little bit of background on the printing press. It was invented in 1440 in Germany, and by 1500 it had been well established throughout Western Europe. Luther famously shocked princes and popes by launching a reformation off of this technology. And then Charles Spurgeon, I think, is one of the best first examples of leveraging this technology for the local church. Because what he'd do, I think he's still considered the most prolific author ever. And a big part of that is because on Sunday, he'd have his stenographer ready to go, and they'd transcribe the sermon as it went. And by Monday morning, he'd have it double-spaced on his desk, ready to revise and get printed in the they called it the penny pulpit, and they'd have it selling all over London streets, and then they'd wire it across the world and get shared all over the place. So he's using the wire also. Now today, print media is kind of languishing, but you could easily make the case that there's more readers now than ever, not just by literacy, but in terms of amount of words read, if you're including digital content. The internet is now the greatest way to spread the gospel both globally and locally. And the rollout of the printing press took over 60 years to cover Western Europe. It took another 17 years for Luther to nail up the 95 Theses. And then shortly after that got spread all over the place. So it's been 27 years since the internet bubble, and Reformed Christianity generally, I would say, we've actually benefited a great deal globally by the internet already. I think of even just recent changes like what seems to be a reformation happening in Brazil. That's aided a great deal by the kind of Reformed content that's easily available on the internet. Individual Reformed churches, on the other hand, I think we're kind of the last ones in line. And I would say, from my experience at least, everybody's giving the same excuse, that they don't know how. And so one of my life goals is to see that excuse laid to rest, because anything I know, I didn't go to get a degree on this. I got my degree in elementary ed, actually. This is just me learning as I go, mainly from internet resources. And I've always been a pretty techie guy, and I understand that people who feel scared of technology generally, that is its own obstacle to overcome. But even that, I think a lot of people could overcome, especially when they see what there is to gain by doing so in sharing the gospel. And there's so many practical solutions. First, though, I just want to backtrack a little bit and talk about why this is such an important area of focus in outreach. I say it's a better low-risk first point of contact. What I mean by that is, take the internet away. Like, before the internet happened, what was your best first point of contact with the church? Aside from just driving by. Mm-hmm. What technology was there?
A phone call.
Mm-hmm.
A phone call.
To do that, you would need...
Oh, I thought you said before the internet.
Yeah, before the internet.
Well, you can still use your phone.
Yeah, but how would you know their number?
A phone book.
There you go. Good.
Book?
Phone book. So, okay, in the phone book, what would be the scope of what you would learn about that church? Let's say they paid for a yellow page ad. The best, like, full page ad. What's the most you could learn about them?
Name, address, location.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what the building looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Service times, maybe, depending on how
Yep.
much they've
Denomination.
crammed in there. Huh?
Denomination.
Denomination.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. That's about it, right? Like, you probably can come up with a few more examples, but that would be about the extent of it. Meanwhile, if, and this is a big if, but if that church showed up in the search results, there is virtually no end to what you could end up knowing about that church, right? If you end up on their website, if they've got a robust website, it could be, you could listen to every sermon they ever preached, potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could you'd read all about their doctrinal standards, basically everything that there would be to know about that church. You could even see examples of pictures of the church inside and outside, all sorts of stuff. And so the difference between that low risk first point of contact and the previous technology is immeasurable. Nobody will come to church without some preceding digital contact. Did anybody prove me wrong? Aside from the one exception I thought of, which is that they drove by, they live really local, and they just decided to show up on Sunday. Real outlier example.
Actually, that did happen to me, because I was in a rental house over in Ada, and I wanted to drive to Lowell, and I kept driving past this big Redeemer OPC
That's
church.
how you came.
That's
That's
part of
awesome.
how I came, yeah.
And that's how we came to, my
Yeah.
wife and I.
Okay.
And from our previous church, it turned out his parents went to this church. So they recommended we come here, and sure enough, the Kavanaughs. So, yeah.
All right, maybe not quite as much as an outlier as I thought, but
Well, in like 50 years, are we going to have the church painted in camouflage? And then it won't work anymore?
well, that said though, even if you had heard about it from a friend, which is, I would say, more likely than just having driven by it. For some churches, it's never going to happen because they're not on some main street like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Even then, you're going to end up punching it into Google Maps at the moment you're ready to go, right?
Another thing that happened was, because it was right at the beginning of COVID, then when I was trying to figure out if Redeemer was where I wanted to land, more or less permanently, I didn't have to go to all the other churches in the area. I could just go online and see their
Mm-hmm.
preaching or whatever
Yep.
information I could get, and then I just kept going, no, Redeemer, Redeemer,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's at some point there's a digital point of contact for almost everybody.
I
And
guess we can call it digital. When we came by one time, evening, nobody was around. Ellen and I stopped, and my wife and I stopped and drove around up in the parking lot. But as we came in and saw the rock, and it says, "For the word of God is a testimony of Jesus Christ." And we had been in a church that was going south, and so
mm,
I said to Ellen, I said, something good's happening here.
mm,
And we came here once and never left.
mhm. That's great. So another question for you guys: who's the target audience of internet outreach? It's kind
Young
of
people,
you
younger
think young people?
generation.
okay.
unchurched.
Unchurched, I hope so. Yeah. I would say that it depends on what the outreach is, and so that it could be just about anyone, but just as an example, if you're doing social media posts, the most likely audience would be basically anybody who's on that social media platform who is friends with the person who hit share on that post. I mean, if we're doing social media well, we're not just posting it, but people in the congregation are sharing it, and then that becomes visible in the feed. I'm thinking of Facebook right now, but other platforms is the same idea. It'll show up because that person shared it, and better yet, if they actually commented on it, they'll have some understanding of what it meant to their friend. Meanwhile, website content, when it's done right, and we'll get into what I mean by that, it reaches the people who are already looking for your church. That's the demographic. But is that a very big demographic to shoot for in Ada, Michigan? I would venture to guess that most of you think it's smaller than it is. And the reason why I say that is SEO. If I have a little limerick for you. If you will never know that, right? What kind of audience you have in that category. You'll never know without SEO, which is the next thing we'll talk about. SEO is search engine optimization. And SEO is the work of helping Google understand that your web page is the best resource for searches that are relevant to the content of that web page. In other words, SEO is the strategy and labor of jumping through whatever hoops Google sets up to accomplish that goal.
It's the whole keyword aspect of what's in the website.
That's one piece of it, yeah. Although you can put in keywords on a page of a website that helps Google in one way, but there's literally I would call that one hoop.
But that's what moves you to the top of the Google page.
It's one of the many.
One of many.
Yeah.
They change the rules
Constantly.
constantly.
The algorithm
Yeah,
gets
the algorithm
they give it a new
constantly
name every
changes.
year, and they
Yeah.
update it with all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
Before you hit enter on a search, the algorithms that Google has is already trying to tell you what they think you might be searching for, right?
Based on your history?
Based on the letters you typed so far,
Okay.
right? So how do I Google something is what they think you might be Googling. Or any number of those next most likely things there in the list, right? Before you even get a search result, Google is feeding you stuff from a thing they call the knowledge graph, which is information they've pulled out of a website to present in this graphical form that they think might be the answer you need so that you don't ever even have to click on a website. Now, this isn't always correct. Now, this is an interesting one that got a bit of a buzz on the internet because they were pulling this from Wikipedia, but who can edit Wikipedia? Everybody.
Anybody.
And that said, Wikipedia knows how to edit these things quickly, but Google also needed to come up with a fix to avoid these kind of situations, because as soon as this gets fixed, they're just going to do it somewhere else and then post up another screenshot to make Google look stupid. So that's the knowledge graph, And we haven't even gotten to the actual search results yet, which is, again, like you say, keywords, any number of other factors that you can jump through these hoops to get higher up in that search result. Now, how often do any of you scroll in the search results before you click on something that you think might be a relevant page?
I do.
Million.
Yeah.
Yeah?
After you type in?
After you type the search, you hit enter, you got your results.
Yes, yes.
Do you scroll or do you just hit one of the top things?
Huh.
The top things are ads.
Yeah.
Well, here's some interesting facts on that, though, because yes, more and more and more of the top things are ads. And that's why, unfortunately, more people are pushed into the area of ranking by paying for it. But even people that are paying for it aren't ranking well if they're not doing the things that are free to do if you know how to do it. And there are ways to even outrank the paid ones. So for instance, knowledge graph is one. There are ads on this search result, but first you have to get past the knowledge graph. If you know how to get yourself in the knowledge graph, you're going to outrank even people who are paying for it. So all these things are in play, but if your head isn't spinning yet as to how complicated this sounds, I want to keep anybody who's getting overwhelmed already, just hang on for a second, because what will happen with search engine optimization is this. What we're ultimately aiming to do is do the things we know are kind of the top things that will help us to improve in this area. And over time we learn more things. We don't have to do this overnight, learning this whole world of SEO. There's a lot we can do to perform better there. But businesses pour millions, not just into the ads, but like the labor hours to rank better on search results. And that was our story with the music school. In 2009, we started the music school with no intention of having any other employees. My wife just wanted more private violin and piano students, so we came up with the name Olive Tree Music Academy, and I did two things. I made a Google Maps listing for our business, and I posted up a website. And within a couple weeks, I don't even think it was a few days, we were getting more calls than she could handle. And that was in 2009. I'm not promising those kind of results here because, like I said, those algorithms get more and more complicated every year. And throughout our 14 years in business, I had to jump through so many more hoops just to get the same results. And that can get a little overwhelming. And it becomes harder to quantify the results in some cases too. But there's a lot of tools to help you with that also. So before I realized this was a hugely, at some point I realized in doing this work that it would also be really hugely impactful work to do for the church. And so I started putting this to work for our church in New Jersey, and then also some other ministries, and eventually started doing some freelance work for churches and ministries as well. Can somebody, I need a volunteer, to pull up on their phone google.com and then search this particular phrase? Looks like she's got it. Search church near me. Or if that doesn't help, you could just do search church near Ada, Michigan, or MI.
Church near me. Oh, it's tracking my house. Hold on.
Is your house a church?
Oh, that's it.
Sometimes. Ada Congregational Keystone Community in the Community Church.
I got the Redeemer.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do
Top.
too.
Redeemer is 1,
That's
2,
near me
3,
here.
4, 5, 6 down.
6 down, and your
Mine's on the top.
and yours,
Redeemer.
Tom?
Pardon, oh, no, actually, my top one is attending a new church, find a church in Forest Hills.
Okay.
But,
So why aren't all our results the same if we're searching the same thing?
good question.
At the same time.
They're personalized a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're personalized, yeah.
It's all about what Google knows about you.
Mm-hmm.
I just had, of course, I googled map directions to how to drive here
Mm-hmm.
from Rockford.
Knows about what you've done, and it knows about where you are. So,
Right.
Okay. Big Brother is watching.
yep.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, the two factors in this case most likely are you're currently very close to Redeemer,
Yeah.
and you've navigated to their site before most likely. But all your browsing behaviors are a little bit different, so the searches are all going to show up a little bit different. So all of the search results cater to your query and what Google knows about you. And doing an objective, non-targeted search result, taking out the factors of what they know about you, is honestly a little bit hard to do. You have to know exactly what to do to pull those factors out of it. But this is what you'd get, at least in my, even time is a factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So over time, the results are going to be different. But in the moment I wanted to pull a screenshot of what an objective search result for church in Ada, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
This is the screenshot I got. You got a few things here. You got the sidebar, which is it's pulling from Wikipedia. It's pulling from, I don't know where that's pulling from. Books, maybe Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Over here you've got results from Google Maps. This is also from Google Maps. If you click more places, it'll take you to Google Maps. Then the first organic result is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it isn't even a local result. And that is, for somebody who knows about SEO,
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge flex. That is impressive that for an obviously local search, a non-local result came up first.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that. Oh, but before I get to that, this is a little bit of a hint as to the answer to the question of how big of a demographic is people who are literally looking for a church in Ada. It's a 10-year data poll from Google Trends on the search church near me, searched by anybody in I couldn't get any narrower than this, but anywhere in the Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, just that whole region, right? That would include here. And the searches for that phrase has been searched increasingly over the past 10 years. Each point on this is a day, so we're talking from basically 1 to 100 searches in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Even through the pandemic when you couldn't even go to a church. It's just a steady increase. I can only speculate as to why, but it's certainly encouraging, right? So this is coming back to the Seventh-day Adventists for a little bit, or Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, Mormons. Why we want to do SEO work is because it's one of the lowest hanging fruits and it's great target marketing. You're aiming for the people that are literally looking for you. We don't like to think about doing outreach as a competitive activity. I know that's kind of on people's minds already, maybe here. And we don't have to. In outreach, digital outreach, yes, we are in one sense in trying to rank higher. We are ranking higher than somebody else, but we don't have to keep this information to ourselves. We can work ecumenically with other people to all prosper in this, right? But I think there's room to think that it actually is okay in some circumstances to want to outrank. If somebody's searching for information on Jesus and other people on the internet want to tell them that he's not a deity, we want to outrank them on the search results. And the people who are ranking top on searches regarding Christianity are a mixed bag. You've got these guys on the left, but you've also got these people on the right. And these guys on the right, I would say, might be the ones ranking the highest when you're searching just general Christian topics. As an example, this is a website by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's a ministry on a denominational level called Big Data and Social Media. I don't know if this thing's going to play. I couldn't quite get this thing to go. Oh yeah, I took it off the audios. So we're going to hear their audio over here. Hopefully it'll be loud enough for everybody to hear. But this is basically the intro to that ministry.
The Social Media and Big Data Department's blog and resources serve to empower ministries of all sizes with the necessary skills and information to make data-driven decisions, to more effectively accomplish our shared goals of serving people, creating community, and advancing the gospel through the creative use of digital tools and technologies. With over 300 resources, 150 blog posts, and 50 videos, ministries have free access to a diverse library of educational materials for their digital communication needs. New content is added weekly and covers the following areas: branding, images and design, church and ministry specific resources, copyright and trademark guidance, courses, data resources, digital discipleship and evangelism, email, guidance for hiring social media positions, podcast, reports and case studies, search engine optimization, social media guidelines, social media strategy resources, social video, texting, tracking and analytics, video and tutorials, and website tips. The website has been visited over 62,000 times and tracked over 98,000 page views. While our department caters to the needs of ministries within the North American division, which accounts for about 70% of our web traffic, our content has reached over 184 countries. In addition, we reach approximately 80,000 people a month with our content on social media. Our videos and tutorials have been viewed over 400,000 times across multiple platforms. We are truly encouraged by all the testimonies and feedback we hear from individuals and organizations who have caught our vision for digital evangelism and discipleship. Together, we can revolutionize ministry through the use of innovative technology, enabling our messages of hope and wholeness to reach deeply into our local communities and around the world. We invite you to visit sdadata.org for yourself and share our resources with your team. You can subscribe to our newsletter or to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us on social media.
So this denomination's bringing their A game on a denominational level to educate people on how to do basically the things I think we're setting out to do. And pulling from an international talent pool to get the job done. I also want to mention, if you remember that list of things they cover, all of those skill sets are wonderfully applicable to outreach ministry. They're also skills you can easily apply in a well-paying job, right? When we train people here to do these things, these are things you can bring into the workforce as well. And so that's one thing that excites me, especially when we're involving the youth who haven't really picked a career yet. This could be something that not only is an area they focus on in ministry, but something that ends up being a career for them. So that's a neat opportunity. And they're all things that are easily self-taught. So this is such a fast-changing industry that there aren't even that many universities that will teach all of these things because they're changing too fast. And it's kind of a wild west as far as that goes. People who are doing freelance work in this kind of set their own prices based off of their experience and their expertise. Because if they're a top performer, people will pay whatever they can get away with, basically, to be able to get the results that these people promise. But the reason why people are paying for it is because it works, and to be able to use those kind of skills to advance the gospel is pretty awesome. So now that we've discussed the justification for this focus, I want to pull back and talk about the goals of the Redeemer Communication Ministry. We want to communicate well to the church body via internal communications. That would include bulletins and newsletters, all those kind of things. We want to expand the application and impact of God's Word preached through the internet. So that's using social media and our website to do more than we're currently doing when it comes to sharing sermons. We think of examples like the little clips from the sermon you could post up on Facebook, any number of other things that we can do. We want to connect the surrounding community to the blessings of becoming a part of this community. And we want to provide outreach opportunities for our members to their friends online. Our current areas of focus include print media, so bulletins, newsletters, brochures, bulletin boards, banners, digital internal communications, congregational emails, newsletters, slide announcements, and digital outreach, so social media, Google Maps, podcast, website, and SEO. It's important that these many tasks also get divided up because for one, we haven't found anyone internally who will handle the scope of all this. But also, all these ministries are expandable, and one person is only so expandable, right? There's a lot of as we have the people to help out, we can broaden the scope of this ministry. And we want to grow the ministry, but we don't want to overextend anyone. And that's really important, that we don't burn anybody out or make anybody feel like they're being too much is expected of them. So what we're praying for is a coordinator who would be on staff to run it. I just got approved to be a full-time student, so that person won't be me in the fall. But I'll talk more about what role I expect to play for the next month and a half or so. But we also would love to see as many volunteers as we can get to expand out the capacity of that coordinator. And I think there's even a possibility of us having another person, maybe part-time or something like that, helping out with the design aspect of the communications role. We want to have that coordinator, though, to keep the presentation consistent, to be consistent in our vision for this whole ministry, and to present a unified message. And so these are just a list of examples of various needs we would have. So desktop publishing, that would include the bulletin, the newsletter, things like that. Graphic designer, this comes into play for some print media things, but also the social media and the website. Video editing, strategy, and data analytics. It may not be a first step, although it is important at some point. Gifts, I just put this category up there as things that could be just things that don't need as much training, although there's always area to grow. But there could be people in this congregation that already have the skills to put these things to work for this ministry. So copywriting, some people really can't embellish on something that maybe feels like a one sentence long worthy thing, announcing an event, when it really, for somebody who's not from here, it deserves maybe 3 paragraphs to explain to somebody as if you're talking to them. I think it's an important aspect of that. And some people might have that gift to offer. Videographer, photographer, sermon quote selections. This is one where I think there's an opportunity for people who never even touch a computer in the process, or very minimally, either by just writing down a note from a quote that could then be made into a graphic for somebody who is handling that, or if it's a small section of a sermon, that could be like a small video on social media. If you can queue up and remember exactly the point in the video where that favorite part of the sermon that you saw, you just send the video link to the person who's handling the video and the timestamp of where it starts, for them to have an idea for what to post. And that's going to be something that you're then more likely to hit share on the social media as well.
Everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm. Or just hit share on
That's
the
what I'm
post.
saying. I'm just looking at that.
Yeah. The gift section is so much longer than I'm giving here. But and the other aspect of this too is, yes, we need the coordinator, but there's going to be a knowledge gap initially for this ministry, especially as we continue to want to grow it. And providing the training is definitely something we're committed to make that happen. And I'm sure there's things that not only aren't on this list but never even occurred to me that people have the gifts to offer. And so I don't want the limitation of this list or the fact that some of these things are out of your wheelhouse now to prevent people from wanting to volunteer, because there's so many resources to get the training in, and you might have a gift that we didn't know we needed. And then there's so many tools. I mentioned there's so many tools online, especially for doing the training, and that's where I feel like I can plug myself in the best in the time I have left here, is because not only I know what those are, but I can provide some help in these weeks to come to help the church to focus in on what I think is the most important first steps, so that even in this coming year, without anybody necessarily becoming an expert in SEO, you can be actually jumping through those hoops already. And then, if you know where the resources are, you can go on training beyond what during the time that I'm here, and go beyond necessarily what I even recommend for what we can learn. It's not a huge amount of time. I am going to be starting in late August, but if we can get the volunteers together, I think if we can share this video that we're making right now with others that you think might be interested, if you guys are interested, we can start talking about what to do on the training aspect right away. And like I say, we don't need to know a lot about the SEO stuff now, but I think it would be great for the church to grow in that also. And but I also think it's really important for us to remember that at no point does everybody have to know everything, right? If we can focus everybody's gifts in one particular area they want to be involved in, then that would be such a blessing. Just to give two examples of areas where there could be some training to get us off the ground, I just want to show two different tools that I imagine we're going to be using we're already starting to put into some use. Some of these, one of these we were using before I was even here, which is Canva. So it's a very user-friendly graphics website software. Their templates make it really easy to, they have all sorts of tutorials, and just the interface itself is pretty user-friendly to put the graphics together really quickly for things like social media posts. And yeah, I've found that most people using it, it's not like learning Photoshop. It's so much easier just to put something together even in just a couple minutes. And connecting to that, another tool we just got that I'm setting up right now, it's called Buffer. And this is one among many social media planning platforms. Basically what it lets you do is, this is just one of the screens where you can do, basically what you're doing is you're planning out your social media. For one example, you can set up a queue so that it's not time-stamped, so that, for instance, if you wanted to do, I don't see a lot of application for this for us in particular, but let's say, for instance, this would be a good use of it here, would be setting up a verse a day. Like I have a little tear-off verse a day calendar. If you were to set up on Canva a nice little picture version of a verse for the day, you could make 365 of them, set them all on the queue, and now you're going to have a verse a day for the rest of the year without ever having to do anything else. I don't think we're probably going to do it quite like that, but I'm just saying that one piece in our social media package would be set to go because that tool is there. But you can also, like you're seeing here, you can assign them to specific dates. You can set it up so that before it actually posts, let's say the coordinator would have to approve it, things like that. It's a pretty robust tool. And what I love about it too is, honestly, I find social media for myself to be more of a vice than than a help in a lot of ways. And so I want the church to be there because that's where so many people are, but I don't want to go there to do ministry and end up just watching cat videos. I don't watch cat videos, but it's a distracting place, right? So this takes that whole thing out of the equation, and it brings all the platforms to one place rather than having to keep track of all the different things.
What's the price of that program?
Well, I set us up for a 50% discount. on, what did we ended up? I think it's like $12 per platform per month. And I think, what did, do you remember the total we ended up with?
I didn't get your receipt yet.
Okay. I think we, after the discount, end up
It's around
paying
500.
12 per platform, and we're doing Instagram, Facebook, and now Twitter. So, yeah. This is my idea. This is going to get tweaked as we go, but this is just kind of, as I see it right now, where we could end up going in the next year, which is to build a team sometime between now and when I'm not here, hopefully hire a coordinator, hopefully early as possible so I can do some training with them, but do the training also then with the team as well. And then establish the calendar, not just the social media calendar you saw, but any kind of planning out we need to do for all the different events we know about, but also a template for how we would do all of social media and digital outreach and communications for the church also, for like a generic template for the calendar for each event we would plan. This is an example of that kind of planning. And then what we can do in the following summer would be to regroup. I know I would be available if they chose to do that, but if the coordinator can handle that at that point too, we can regroup in the following summer to determine the next steps, figure out what worked, what didn't, growth opportunities, and come up with a new calendar. That's it. That's what we're praying for. So if any questions at this point.
Would you expect the coordinator to, you expect the underlings, and I don't mean that as a bad term, but I would expect the coordinator to be very organized and be a structured person, but the technical people would be under him or her primarily. I wouldn't expect the coordinator to do a lot of inventing and things like that. That's what he has a staff for, these people. So although they're volunteers, but.
Yeah, a way you could think about it is the coordinator is the calendar person.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They create the vision and the schedule, and these are the things that we're doing, and the volunteers, or even if it turns into another paid position, we'll see how that turns out. But those people would be the people that are getting the things done.
Yeah.
I would put it that way. I don't. That doesn't have to be inglorious. It can be fun work, but I think that feeds into different personalities too, where some people just like to be told what to do. Mm-hmm. I'm honestly a weird mix of the two. I have my visions and stuff, but if you just tell me what to do, I enjoy just buckling down and getting it done. And I think most people kind of fit into one category or the other. But I also think it's a great, through this ministry, through all of those roles, everybody gets to benefit in growth, in leadership development, and in the training, but also working as a team.
What are the expectations for the coordinator in terms of hours?
Well, Pastor Jeff, maybe you can jump in on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a good question. It depends largely on who the person is and what they're capable of doing. So when we started out on this task to find a communications coordinator, we started out wanting the person who coordinated and the person who executed what was coordinated to be the same person, because that provides the most integration. And that would be about a 25-hour-a-week position. As time has gone on, and we haven't found someone to fill that, we have thought about it in terms of different skill sets. So if a coordinator said, here's how much I could do in 10 hours, that's what needs to be done, then we would try to fill up those 10 hours, both with the coordinating, but also some of the functioning. But we're less concerned with how many hours per person, more concerned with making sure that the things that are done on schedule and done well. So at the beginning, we were thinking a pretty defined job description with defined hours, and as things have gone on, we're thinking in terms of more flexibility. If someone has the skill to do 25 hours worth of work, just coordinating and doing, well, that would be the easiest. God has so far not given us that person, so now we're thinking about doing it differently. So it's a hard question to answer apart from knowing the person and their skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to measure your skills though against what you don't know what is anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's not a job, if I saw a job description and you said, you know, this is what you need to do as a coordinator, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and I could go, I could do B and Z and W, but I can't do, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like there's not enough of a description or a job description of what this coordinator is supposed to do, because I've heard all summer long, we need a social media coordinator or whatever, and I just go, well, I don't know if I'm qualified, because I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so back when we were advertising for communications, we were called a communications coordinator, there was a job description involved. Yeah, so that was emailed out a number of times. It was on the website. You could go and look at that. Look, you can go back and look at that,
Yeah,
but
okay.
that no longer functions
Yeah,
in the same way. So that list of tasks is still there. It's still a list that we need to complete, but how that list is completed is more open. So if someone were to say, I'm interested in communications coordinator position, the next step after this is to set up an interview where we walk through some of those things. Because every person who is interested may have a different set of questions, and we might have a different set of questions for them. So there would be specific questions about how would you function, talk about your organizational skills, talk about how well you follow a schedule, talk about your ability to coordinate with other people. Is there a situation where you've done that? How did you do it? How well did it function? Those are important questions for a coordinator. And those are soft skills that would be a little bit more difficult to just say I have that or I don't. That's a topic of conversation. But then there are hard skills as well, like the things that Andy was talking about, like could you learn how to use these particular tools or tools like them in order to coordinate? Because the soft skills and the hard skills have to go together. Being a great people person would be good, but then we need actually the functioning in that role so that the tools that you're using actually are used in a way that's productive. So that would be, in my view, that would be a level 2 kind of discussion. What exactly do you want me to do? Okay, we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm. That comes from ideally a certain optimistic willingness to learn, right? And that's, like for instance with the graphics, the Canva, somebody might not have never even touched the thing, but there are people who would say yes, but I'm terrified of the concept. They might not be as ideal of a person as somebody who could say, you know what, for this purpose, I'll make sure that we can get that taken care of. But we're praying for the person. It could be a lot of different types of people.
It also depends on what kind of team members you come up with. Maybe you get a couple of team members that are just easy on that stuff. So the coordinator can easily give it out of their hands, right? And you don't have to...
From what I'm understanding is that as a coordinator, as somebody in this position, is lining up the church calendar of events to get the stuff pushed through social media, as well as pushing things throughout the week as far as clippets of sermons or just general updates that maybe we want out on social media for our community to see. But are we also looking for somebody to be working on the actual website and integrating new links into there?
Yeah.
Because that was briefly discussed, but a little bit more tricky
I
to do.
leaned a
Or
little hard
do we
on...
have a background? What's the background that runs our website?
So the platform is called Church Plant Media.
Okay.
And it would be another aspect of the job. I leaned kind of hard on the presentation on SEO 1 because it's my wheelhouse. But two, I think it's such a powerful example of what the impact of this ministry can be if you're handling that side of things. And that even though I wouldn't say social media is even that significant a topic when it comes to SEO, it's not unrelated. So for instance, as you post links to your pages on your website on social media, that can drive traffic, and traffic can generate higher rankings and things like that.
So are we looking for people who are coordinating events instead of emailing Tracy, emailing this person saying, we need a promotion done, we need a push on Facebook or Instagram for this? Is that what you're, because right now, I don't know, Tracy, if you get a lot of those emails, but are we looking to reroute those emails to this person and be in charge of pushing the advertising part of that?
Again, it depends on the coordinator themselves, what they can do.
Okay.
It's so hard to tell right now where everything is gonna end up. I mean, because if we can find someone who on a volunteer basis wants to do a little piece of the pie, then that's great. You know, it's gonna take a lot of coordinating.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we're looking for someone to coordinate those things, that's right.
Yeah.
Because without coordination, all the pieces become so diverse, diffuse, that it's hard for a common approach that's integrated and genuinely helpful to emerge.
Yeah.
So you need someone sort of who is streamlining it, someone who controls the funnel, so that all this energy that's being poured in then has a place to go in a way that has some integration.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we just said everybody can post whatever they want on the church Facebook page, I mean, it would just be a free-for-all.
Right.
And we really want to encourage people to contribute, but we want to do it in an organized way. And that's where the coordinator comes in. That's the organization.
So you want someone to coordinate the Bear Man, who is coming next month, I believe, right? You know, so you want website coordination, you want search engine optimization on that word, Bear Man or something like that, and you want Facebook and other media.
But this also includes the whole internal communications aspect too, so the bulletin, the newsletter. All that.
Yeah.
The bulletin and the internal slides, announcement slides, those, which you'd have to be more artsy-fartsy minded for that, so.
Canva.
I think we
Canva.
Yeah.
need a really good graphics person.
So if you think back to the job description we had of the communications coordinator, it had all those pieces in it. Now what we're doing, if you can think about it this way, is we're thinking of all those pieces individually with a coordinator to help all those pieces fit together. And if a coordinator can also contribute to certain pieces, well, then that adds to the hours for that person. If a coordinator isn't able to do that, then we're trying to find volunteers to fit and fill in those spots.
Right. Okay. You might want to print that out for the people here who don't seem to have it.
So
This is the original.
First up,
description.
everybody please pray, because this is a really wide open opportunity. It's a somewhat narrow window in terms of my aspect of the role in this, but I feel there's a lot of room for being optimistic about where things could go even in the next few weeks in terms of starting up this thing. And between the people that are here, the people that watch, I don't know how, I saw you fiddling with things. Are we well recorded or no?
Kind of. We had a little camera problems, but.
Okay. The gist of it's there though?
Yeah, we can make it work.
Okay. Yeah, so people that watch this video, please share it with people here.
Right.
And pray that more people will come forward, because the more people we can pull from for the coordinator position, but also the volunteer work and all these aspects of the work to be done. The more time I have with each of them, the better.
Yeah, the sooner we have people lined up, the better the training will be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not to say that the training will not exist. When Andy goes to seminary, we'll still try to provide training, but it won't be the same level as can happen over the summer.
And I want to be well established also, not just in training, but training, so that as people step out of roles, they're not just equipped to know how they did what they did, but to how to pass it along to the next person. But also on the coordinator level, for the coordinator to be maybe not, let's say, maybe the coordinator never touches Canva. They just know that the work needs to be done there, and there's a volunteer who handles it. So maybe they can't teach somebody how to use Canva, but I'm hoping they'll at least know where the resources are to be able to get the next person trained, or the volunteer who has been handling able to handle that. But
Do you mind if I
please.
add something? In the last two, new members classes that we've had, they've been maybe 15 people each. As part of that, I talk about, well, how did you become? I asked the question, how did you become connected with Redeemer? So we're interested in that answer. As we're talking in class, we're also interested in that answer in the form that we ask people to fill out when they apply for membership. So we try to track that so that we're pouring our energy into the places where people connect first. Like if people said, oh, I come because I saw the sign in the church, we're gonna make sure that sign is really good, really accurate, it really portrays well who we are. But that's not how most people are coming to our church. So if I go back through those two classes, there may be an exception or two, but almost all of them watched a good portion of who we are as a church for a considerable amount of time before they ever showed up at the service.
Where?
On the internet.
On YouTube.
On YouTube?
I didn't ask if he was YouTube or if he was in sermon audio, but he was some online platform. And that has become the norm.
Yeah.
So it used to be that when I started ministry 20 years ago, people would invite their friends, and that would be their first exposure to our church. That's changed. So I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying that's different. And so people develop this past Sunday, a young couple, after the evening service, came and said, we'd like to introduce ourselves, we're gonna become members. I'd never met them before. They said, we've been watching for about 6 months on the internet, and we've been here for a month, and what we saw on the internet matches our experience in the last month, and that's why we want to become members. So that connection makes our introduction on social media or whatever platform they're viewing really critical. It's got to be accurate in terms of who we are. We want to portray to them exactly who we are in a way that's honest and in a way that's also winsome. And we don't want to confuse them and say, as long as you're participating virtually, it's the same thing as being here in person. We want it to be our introduction to a fulsome life in the church. But it is a very critical part of what we've developed, who we are now as a church. And for all the negative that often is pushed in terms of social media, when it's an introduction to a fulsome life in the church, it's good. It's really, really good. Yeah. So this is not the end to everything, but it's the title that Andy gave this presentation was the most effective way to reach people who are not Christians in our community. That's not bluster. That's actually true. Now that doesn't turn them into mature
I convinced you of that?
Yes, that doesn't turn them into mature disciples of Jesus Christ. That's the work of our church. That's what we're dedicated to. That's what we pursue. We're putting a lot of energy and resource into that. But until that first step is taken, and they get to step 2, 3, 4, if there's no first step, or it's not a good step, they'll never get to the other ones. And this is the first step.
It's a virtual conversation, because I know even when we didn't have I don't think we had an Easter push or Good Friday push for our Good Friday service. So instead I actually had to have those conversations with people. Anyways, before you could just share it on Facebook, and it went to, 152 of my friends, my acquaintances. It's a couple times people be like, I didn't know you guys had a Good Friday church, we'll come. So I just feel like it's that nonchalant virtual conversation that some people just don't want to have. So,
Talk about demographics.
yeah.
If you look at Google search trends around Christmas and Easter,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of Christmas and Easter Christians out there
Yes.
who we'd love to have coming to church,
Right.
And that's exactly how you do it, not just on social media, but on the Google Maps. There's a thing called Google Maps posts,
Yeah.
and that can show up right on the pin. When you post on their events that are happening, I've had it happen at the Heritage Church because our secretary posted an event on the website and then, furthering it onto the Google Maps post. Suddenly you're looking at, there's the pin, there's our name, and right under it says Easter service today or whatever, whenever it was. So many, hundreds of different ways that by doing the SEO stuff you can end up with that stuff becoming more eye-catching as people are navigating around.
Do you use Google Analytics?
Yeah, that's a whole category. I mentioned analytics and as one of the things in the skills that people can use. I've heard from somebody here that there was some sort of analytics tracking thing that was set up, but Google Analytics either wasn't what it was.
Not that one. It was on Facebook. It was analytics for Facebook.
Oh, so that's not even related to the website. So no, we haven't been tracking website traffic unless it relates to social media.
Well, that's not entirely the case.
Okay.
So our website underwent a total revision about a year ago. And the reason for that is it appeared to me that we were confused who we're trying to target with our website. Are we trying to provide a place for information for everyone in the congregation? Or are we trying to target people who come to our website as first exposure to our church? So because we have really robust internal communications, so we send out a lot of emails, there's lots of opportunity to get information internally. Our website is now targeted to people who would be looking for our church. If first exposure, so they pull up church near me, it goes to our website. So our website, I think, is probably a quarter the size it used to be.
Yeah, it's quite small, yeah.
And that was intentional because I went through with Lexi every page and how many people visited every page in our website. And the pages that were intended most clearly for people in our church were hardly visited at all. But the pages that you would think people would go to if they were looking for a church were the most heavily visited.
Okay.
Oh, I'm forgetting. It's Church Plant Media itself that tracks some of this stuff, right?
They do
right on
now,
the dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't even thinking about
This was on our
that.
whole platform.
But as far as Google Analytics go, I also did set that up in addition to what we've got going on.
Right.
So that'll be tracking going forward.
So there's room for improvement on our website. There is.
Yeah.
But we use Church Plant Media because it provided the easiest template, most direct template for the kind of thing that we're looking to do.
Any other questions?
Do rankings come into play when you do a YouTube search for a service? I ran into this. It's a rare time when I'm not here, but we got home late on Father's Day from our daughter, and I tried to get on to the evening service, and I could not get it to come up. And I went to YouTube, and I went to Sermon Audio, and I kept going back and forth between our main webpage and trying to get on, and it was just about the time of the prayer, just before the message, that I actually connected. And,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I'm not a tech guru, that's for sure. I had David helping me out on some things, and but my wife has had problems when she's tried to get on, and I'm just wondering. I mean, there must be other people having trouble if
Yep.
I can't do it.
You need to
One of the
create an
first
account and
conversations-
subscribe to it, right?
When I first got here, one of the first conversations I had with the team, Tracy brought up the whole fact that when you're on Sermon Audio, that's not where the videos are.
Nope.
And so when you want to see the video, you have to do that whole, and YouTube is a great place to navigate to find an archived sermon. So
If you create an account on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our channel,
Yeah.
and then it's right there, right when you open it up.
but it's
All
this
the
big
time.
gallery, and the image doesn't show you exactly. You
It
got
just
to
says
read the
live.
text, which isn't
Right.
nothing, but there's better navigational solutions than what we have currently implemented, and I think there's a couple ways we could handle it, but it has been on my radar already to either have us upload the videos also to Sermon Audio. There's simulcast options out there. We
We do
could
do that.
say again.
We do that.
You do
To
simulcast,
Sermon Audio.
so but then it doesn't get archived there, because Sermon Audio doesn't automatically archive,
Right,
right?
we have to put in a little effort.
Yeah. So
I don't do that, so.
it's fine. There's
But
so
yeah.
many different ways we could handle this. So, for instance, websites have blog posts. Church websites, like through Church Plant Media, you can also, we haven't been, but you can also create a different kind of category of posting, which is called sermons. And so, in that category of posting, you can put in what the URL is for both the audio and the video. And now there's a new interface right on the website to easily get to both. So that's one of multiple ways to get that taken care of. Would you mind closing in prayer if we're done
No.
with questions?
I want to channel the inner voice now. That's been what I've been trained to do at the end of a meeting. And that's to give you next steps.
Mm.
So what are the next steps? So for us, it is getting this video prepared. So what happened here tonight will be available to the congregation or other people who are interested, and they can see this presentation. Or to make the presentation, the slides, available to people with a voiceover, whoever that's going to work best.
Mhm.
So we want to move the conversation outside of here. If any of you have questions, the next step is to contact, naturally Andy would be a person to ask the technical questions. So what did you mean by this? How would that work? In terms of coordinator and volunteer positions themselves, it would be contacting Tracy or me to talk about, well, what would that look like specifically? So the questions you were asking about, okay, where does the skill set work? How many hours would that be? That some of that would be Andy, because Andy would be best at evaluating skills. But in terms of hiring, it's our team, but Tracy and I are first line for that. The other thing is, if you know anyone else, after going through this, you think, well, I didn't realize that's what we were talking about. And I can think of someone who'd really be interested in that. Please do that as well. Because we're trying our best to spread the net very widely. Because we want people who are capable. We're less concerned about having skill in every area at this point, as long as someone has the ability to learn. But we're always, whenever we talk about hiring someone, we're very, very convicted about hiring someone who fits well as our team. Because that's super important in terms of communication and making sure that things get done, that we can have good conversations. Because sometimes we have to really challenge each other because we don't follow through the way we should. So, yeah. Our team is great.
It is.
It really is. I'm not saying that tongue in cheek, and also because I feel responsible for it. But it really is. This is easily the best place I've ever worked. Yeah, in terms of our team.